Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming and welcome. This is the 6th in a series of 8, so there have already been 5 other webinars. What I would say is they are open access resources, and they are only 2 clicks away, not even really. So you can find the other 5 webinars on the EMCC UK website. If you click on first on resources, then on climate coaching, that's where they are. They're on that page along with blogs and articles and other resources as well. We were hoping that we were going to get around 60 people today joining us. So there have been, I think it was 59 that have registered. So hopefully at some point in time, there'll be a number of us joining. Firstly, I want to say a huge thank you to Zoë Cohen, Dr. Alison Whybrow, Linda Aspey, Charly Cox, Sarah Flynn and Professor Peter Hawkins for contributing and carrying on out this conversation around climate change. I know that from the EMCC perspective, it's something that we want to hold as part of the way of doing business. It's not a hot topic. It's, you know, it's not going to be a flash in the pan. It's not something that's coming in and going out. So it's going to be with us as we move forward strategically. It's definitely part of our conversations. I'm just having a look because there were a number of things that I wanted to say. So about the clicks on the website, and then finally about capturing questions. If you have got any questions today, if you can put them in the chat, and because it's a panel today, they are going to be able to answer questions as we go along. But in the event that we had got 60 people and there was an overwhelming number of questions, our intention is to be able to capture those at the end, download them, distill them and be able to put a Q&A at the end on the website. So thank you for joining us today, and I'll hand over to the panel.
Thank you ever so much, Hannah.
Thank you, Hannah.
And I guess following the introduction that Linda gave in terms of just inviting you to say more about, you know, what's bringing you here today. The other thing that we wanted to do was to get a sense of who you are and what your journey's been, potentially since we started this series, but is to ask the polling questions. Would that be the right thing to do now? So is that you, Hannah, who's setting up the poll?
It's Louise.
Louise. Okay.
Right, so we're having a bit of problems here because now it says I'm logged in from another device, which I'm not, so I'm not too sure.
Okay.
Has any of the panel got the polling questions?
Yeah, we can see those.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we're really curious about is how many, if any, of these webinars that you've attended during the time that they've been running, and how your awareness of the wider system impacts the climate and ecological crises, and the impacts of that have increased. And what extent has that impacted on your personal life and on your practice? So just a rough estimate of those things. And I guess we're not going to attribute everything down to these webinars.
Also, I just noticed here, it says these are multiple choice questions. There are several questions, but probably only best just to choose one, because you can't be 5% and 10% at the same time, I think. I think that's just a little typo there.
Can I just ask, seeing as there's so few of us, is this in relationship, so when it asks about the impact on our personal life and our practice, is this from the webinars themselves or climate awareness as a whole?
I think it's more climate awareness as a whole. We're not really attributing the awareness that we have to the webinars. We're just curious about that. And we're just taking the responses in each in sort of isolation. So we're not assuming that one leads to the other. That would be a slightly flawed scientific experiment. So yeah. So welcome, Michael. We are just getting started because we've delayed due to some technical issues. So there's just a poll up at the moment, and if you feel that you have, everyone's responded to that. So I might end that poll now. Thank you. Okay, so it feels like most, just sharing the results, if I share those with you. Most people have been to something, but it's and some people have been to all 5. There's been some impact of, or some shifting of awareness over time, and some greater or lesser impact of that awareness in our personal lives. So some people have really shifted completely how they're operating, and some people managed to bring about some changes in their practice. But again, it feels like there's a huge opportunity to translate some of that awareness into action in different ways. So we'll explore that as we go through. I'm going to stop sharing the poll now, and I think you may need to stop doing whatever you're doing on your screens for that to go away. Okay, all gone. Lovely. So shall we carry on? I think there were some questions that we had already, weren't we, that we wanted to respond to. So Hannah, did anyone else want to comment on those results or on the shifting awareness that they've had?
I think for me, I mean, certainly from the result of the first one is that I'm saying there are 3 people that have said that they haven't seen the other webinars. They are available, like I say. So, and I would strongly advise. I know that I've listened to things twice, even being able to listen to it in my car and things like that. And in terms of changes that I've noticed for myself of being, not just from a coaching perspective, even from a household perspective, you know, thanks to everybody here today, you know, I'm even changing our shop for toilet paper and things like that, you know, so yeah, so it's definitely had an impact in conversation that happens in our house, but also from a coaching perspective, and they are very, very accessible as well.
I think one of the other things that I would share is that I'm constantly shifting and changing how I live, how my family lives, how my business operates, and how my practice operates, which are all separate things in relation to my growing awareness. So it's not something that transforms overnight from 0 to 100. It's a case of shifting and collecting habits and understanding how to change. So mine's changing all the time as well, and I'm learning so much from everyone else in this community about what I can do.
I think too, there is a ripple effect. Once you know one thing, it leads to you thinking about things very differently. And just yesterday, I was with some people for a whole day event, and we were going to have an hour's break. We were on Zoom. We're going to have an hour's break for lunch. And several people said, well, let's leave the link open and let's come back later. And I said, well, how about we just close the link off, close the tab down, close our internets down if we're not using it, because it's all energy. And there were, 15 of us in the meeting. So all of that energy for only an hour, but it just gets you thinking, I think, yeah, do we need all these tabs open? If it was on a battery, we wouldn't leave it open. So why would we think we would do that? Because it's electricity. And one thing just impacts on another, and the small things all collectively make that difference, can make that difference.
Yeah, I think that's a change that I'm sort of experiencing. Is I think a lot of people are coming into relationship with the climate or the climate challenge, which however you want to phrase it. And now they're at the stage of wanting to get into action. Some people are doing things, but in terms of coaching, often people are going, I'm not quite sure how to bring it about. And there's a real sort of eagerness now to start putting that into practice, which is wonderful to see, because we need as many people on the pitch as possible.
Permit me to say hello to everybody, and I'm a bit of a newcomer. So I've been in the environmental sustainability space for a long time, but I'm more recently to the coaching space. I assume you can all hear me because there's nods and body language. So there's a little story about Second Life, which is a virtual reality character that you can create. And those characters have a larger carbon footprint than an indigenous Indian person living in the Amazon forest. So and it's an arresting thought that something that isn't even real has real, it's a challenge of what reality is. And all the photographs we all take and mindlessly, unawarely get uploaded to somewhere, they have a contribution. So deleting and taking off and not having gigabytes of photographs of, anyway, I can ramble on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Michael, it's lovely to have you, and I think that just helps us see that everything we do, it comes back to the Jane Goodall quote, doesn't it? Everything we do has an impact, and so what is it that we're going to do? And there's so much that is hidden, and I guess that's one of the challenges that we're facing into here. There's so much that's hidden, not just in terms of what we don't pay attention to, all the stuff in our lofts or all the stuff in our loft of our digital footprints, but also the stuff that's hidden in the dynamics of the way the earth and the stories that we tell and the way that we've created our world, which gets in the way of us unpacking and unpicking and restoring and reframing our lives. So what you're saying there also, although you're saying, I'm really sorry, I'm speaking, you know, I'll get off your soapbox. Actually, it's a really important soapbox to get out and stand on and remind ourselves actually that everything makes a difference. And so we can, as well as making a detrimental or degenerative difference, we can make a regenerative difference by making that shift. So thank you. Zoe's having real problems, which is why we don't have our beautiful dulcet tones from Warrington or from Cheshire. And, brilliant.
I'm back. I'm back. Sorry, Ellie. Yeah, just seems to be having Zoom problems, but thank you so much for that. It's really interesting to see those polling results, and I guess that range of kind of responses is where the bigger community is. You know, we're all at different places, and we all need to help each other move. I'm keeping an eye on the time and imagining that whilst we have started late and we're having issues with connections. Oh, I think I was turning my video off. I suspect I froze then and you couldn't hear me. If you can hear me, I'm hoping that you can hear me. Okay, wonderful. I'm wondering if we should move into the first lot of panel questions, Hannah, just keeping an eye on the time.
Hannah, we can't hear you.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Yes, you can all hear me. Oh, brilliant. Good. Right. Okay. First panel question. So if I go to Sarah first, Sarah, what is the context now?
Ooh, that's a huge question. So I think we're seeing much more awareness. I think some of the hidden things are starting to become a little bit more visible. So for example, the soya that goes behind the food chain and the meat process and so on. I think people are gaining a lot of awareness and starting to do some things, and it's so much more normal to discuss it. But I think perhaps we often have that sense of paralysis, and I think the coming together and the sharing and the positivity is starting to encourage rather than sort of disempower people. So, and that's what I'm enjoying seeing much more. There's just with David Attenborough and so many different things, it's coming into people's awareness. And what I'm hoping to see is that next shift of that sense of, yeah, I can do something, not, oh, I'm aware and I'm terrified and I'm immobilized. So.
Thank you. I'm really sorry, Michael. I am going to mention this, that David Attenborough in the last 2 weeks has joined Instagram, but I have to say and particularly again in our house and for young people, I just think that that's been an amazing thing for him to have done, because it's connected him with an audience that may not have been listening before, or you know. I just think. And I know what you're saying about the pictures and things, but I think it's been a great platform for him to get involved in. So Linda, same question.
Well, I think the context is shifting every day. There's bad news and good news every day. I think one of the things that I've noticed particularly is around the business world, an increasing awareness that sustainability matters. And it's two things really. One, that sustainability is not just about recycling and those kind of things. Sustainability is systemic, and it's to do with fairness, it's to do with global inequity, global diversity, it's to do with inclusion, it's to do with how we invest, how we look after the products after they leave our factories, so it's to do with the whole of the value chain. There's a lot of wide awareness, which is good. And with that, there's an increased understanding that if companies want to survive, they've got to actually adopt some of these principles, either laid down by the United Nations or other kinds of business organisations, because they won't survive. Increasingly, there's a large number of investment portfolios saying we're going to divest entirely, that particularly perhaps wouldn't in the past. For example, the Church of England, it's held on for a long time onto some of its assets which are investing in fossil fuels. They've now said, Exxon, you've just not pulled your finger out enough for us to invest anything of any of our portfolio in you. So where they go, others follow. BT just today or yesterday said it was going to divest all of its pension funds of fossil fuels. And that's the largest occupational pension scheme in the world, I believe, or maybe Europe, maybe Europe. So there's lots of things happening in the business world, and that's really good. And there's also more and more support for small and medium-sized enterprises. And as executive coaches, some of us will be working with smaller companies and large companies. We don't need, I think there's also a growing need of awareness that coaches do not need to become sustainability consultants to add value to these discussions. I think just simply having that systemic awareness means that we can hold the space well. So I think those are some good news. There is some fudge news as well, as Boris Johnson saying that 30% of the UK landscape is going to be dedicated now to the natural world. He's forgotten to tell us that actually 26% is already considered that anyway. So he's made this massive pledge that's actually a 4% pledge. So there's still some fudging, but and then on the good news side, there's organisations like us coming together. There's other things happening. There's lots of, so yeah, there's good and bad news, and we take one step forward and sometimes take 2 steps back, but equally we sometimes take 2 steps forward and stay there. Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you, Linda. Can I just ask, are there any organisations that you would suggest us to observe, that are actually actively out there that we could look at?
Yeah, well, I think Unilever has always been one to watch. Paul Polman was the former chief executive, and an incredible amount of work's been done by Unilever that we wouldn't have necessarily expected. Mars has just agreed to stop using palm oil in certain ways, and it's reducing its supply chain so that it can better manage what's going on. One of the biggest problems of supply chain is that they get so big, is that the companies can't keep track of them. And Alison's cats come in, and we've all got cats, it's lovely. So I think Unilever's one to watch, and it's always been one to watch. IKEA is doing a lot, Mars is doing a lot. And if you just keep your LinkedIn feed with a hashtag of sustainable business, you see all sorts of wonderful things. Yeah.
Thank you. Alison.
By the way, one more. Brewdog. Brewdog. Watch Brewdog. My goodness me, watch what Brewdog is doing. Yeah.
Thank you. Alison.
So I think there was a few relevant shifts in addition to what Linda shared. I think there are some networks such as Business Declares to keep an eye on. And there are other networks out there which are offering sort of open source co-learning and also helping people really take the steps that they need to take together. So I think there's a lot of communities that are springing up that are leaning into this, that are not individual businesses, but are collections of businesses or collections of professions coming together. And obviously one of the things that we've been very connected to is the development of the Climate Coaching Alliance, which now has it doesn't sound very many, but over 500 members, grown organically, and really, really importantly, they go right around the world, from New Zealand right round to Hawaii, in every continent, many, many countries. And that's all about supporting coaches to build community, to learn together how to lean into this. So it's a collection of coaches, psychologists, therapists, everybody who might be in that place of supporting people to transform. So there's a huge amount of learning happening there, and that's grown tremendously from a standing start of 3 in November last year to over 500 and continuing to grow. We had an incredible 24-hour conversation last week, which we're all still recovering from. But again, the learning there, you could see the platform is shifting from which people are operating from, their level of awareness, their level of what the changes that they're making, both in their lives and in their professional practice. So there's so much to learn from that intercontinental connection. The other thing that's really shifted in the sort of system of coaching is that the professional bodies have come together and declared and made a statement declaring their commitment and their view that actually coaching is not only there just to avoid doing bad, but needs to do something really positive and needs to bring the climate and global the environmental emergency into the room. There's not a demand that needs to happen, but to say actually this is our work too. It's not only the work, but we don't only need to look at the individual, the organisation, but we need to look at the social and ecological impact of the work that we're doing as coaches and the work and the choices that our clients are making. So how do we align towards more of a living systems perspective? And that's huge. So 5 professional bodies launched that on the 29th of May. Other professional bodies are signing up so APAC have signed up, my cats are now fighting, and some of the psychological bodies are also signing up to that. So we're starting to see a real systemic shift.
Can I add, Linda? I think we're seeing that lovely positive ripple effect. So often there's that sort of negative knock on when you've spoken to someone who's either you don't connect with or they're so negative you go, ah, but actually we're seeing that beautiful positive ripple effect happening, and that's just a joy to see.
Thanks. So I was just reading this morning that there was a global study of 27,000 people to ask them about what was of concern for them. And 60% mentioned climate change as being in their top areas that was a very serious concern, and 60% also in that same top 4 said that it was they were worried about reduction of natural resources and how we're managing resources. So 60% of people in a 27,000 person study are now saying that these are issues. I don't think we would have got that a few months ago. And just a personal victory, on Radio 4 Today programme yesterday morning in the UK, which is the UK's flagship Radio 4 programme, for those of you that don't know it, Nick Robinson, who's the presenter, said that thanks to the likes of Greta Thunberg and Extinction Rebellion and the work of David Attenborough, climate, there's a lot more conversations going on around climate. Now, he wouldn't have said anything positive at all about Extinction Rebellion last week. So there's a big shift in awareness that noise needs to be made, and it is being made. So that was just a personal victory for myself anyway, as an Extinction Rebellion speaker. Hannah, back over to you, I think. Where are we now?
Thank you. Yeah, I think we're going into breakout rooms now. And the questions for the breakout rooms are: what do I notice is shifting in me, and what is the most courageous step I could take now? So there are 2 questions for us during the breakout room. Hello everybody, welcome back. I think, has everybody returned now, Louise?
Yes, everybody's back.
Right, okay. So I think where we'd got to was reflections on the chat for 10 minutes. So and the panel, do you want to reflect on anything that's been put in the chat so far?
because we're a smaller group than we thought we were going to be because of the technical issues, there must be about 30 other people who haven't been able to get into this webinar, unfortunately. Maybe we should repeat it at a later date without the tech issues. But for those people who have been able to be here, it would be interesting, really interesting to, we've got the opportunity in a little bit of time to hear some individual reflections, either verbally or in the chat on the questions, if, either the questions that we pose for the breakout in terms of what do you notice shifting in yourself and what's the most courageous thing, the step that you could take, or if you didn't have that conversation in a different conversation, it would be equally interesting to hear actually what came out of the conversation you did have. So just genuinely curious if you're happy to share either verbally or write a reflection in the chat. Feel free to to start speaking or use your little electronic hand thingies or gestures if you want to speak.
I think the group that we were in, Zoe, raised some really, really great points. And Michael, if I quote you wrong, you know, shout up. I think what Michael said that really started us off was about needing getting the courage and actually building the courage and to work with clients in that way, and we started talking and we said, how, you know, like, what about the tension between what's ours and actually working with the client and what the client, so bringing our values. And although we all know that we bring ourselves to coaching anyway, and to actually feel like we're actually sort of, and I think it was Stephen who said, elbowing it in something in, and doing it with a soft elbow rather than a sharp elbow. And Michael also said about doing it via invitation. And then Alison raised the point of rather than this being should be's, must be's, that we can hold it lightly and really think about think about the client and think about the clients that we might want to work with, might not want to work with, and it may be around this as one of our core values. I think does that capture it, everybody who was in our group? Yeah.
Could I rather than respond, because I'm kind of newcomer, I have a question that I think pervades a lot of things, and this might be quite a naive question as well, but to what extent is it an implicit bias in the tools that we use that prevents us from perhaps building dialogue around particular issues? Because when I think about the tools that I've kind of been brought up on, they're for a time when we didn't consider these kind of issues. And in terms of practical actions, is there something that we as a professional group could do about the tools that we have? I don't know whether, Sarah, with your coaching approach, you know, with climate change, maybe you have some suggestions there, and is that something that we could develop and share with others?
I think it's a great question, and I think it's embedded in a sort of a wider conversation about how do we show up in the world, how do we connect with our clients and are explicit about our worldview and what we stand for in the world. And that's when we often connect with our clients. And then there is the sort of being really clear in contracting, in the sort of bigger contracts, but then the little micro ones in the moment. But articulating something rather than sort of trying to push someone without it being explicit, articulating a contradiction we might be observing and handing it back to the client so that they are feeling empowered to do it. And in terms of, so that's the kind of the general context, but I think linking it to specific tools we use, I I don't know. I think it's a great question, and I think it's one I need to think about. But I think if we have the lens of showing up courageously in our practice, then any of the tools that we might utilize and draw upon, if we're doing that with the mindset and the courage, then we can, all of the tools that we use can be adapted and made to embrace this. I'm just thinking of the wheel of life and so on, and actually just embedding this explicitly in our practice and in the way that we engage with the tools we use. I don't know if the rest of the panel have got any thoughts and suggestions on that.
I think the insight that you brought there, Alison, is wonderful. Yes, we are absolutely limited by the tools that we use, and so new tools are being developed and new ways of inquiry are being developed, new ways of contracting are being developed. So using hold-on diagrams that bring the ecosystem onto the page and using all of the levels of the system in our contracting. Neil's wheel rather than the wheel of life. So rather than focus on you, what's the focus on the bigger system? What's on legacy? What's the focus on values? What's the focus on purpose? What's the focus on legacy? Many of the tools we use in existing tools that we use are really important. But when we use metaphor, how do we use natural metaphors? How do we bring in the frame of a garden? So how do we make the ecosystem explicit in the room that we're already in? And you're so right. The tools are limited by the limited frames that the people have used to create them impose on them. Not that they're wrong, it's just that they need adapting and reconsidering. Sorry, got excited.
Cool. Michael had his hand up a couple of times.
I really, really liked what you just said, Alison, but and. I've been in this field a long time and I don't know everything and I don't try. So anybody coming to this recently, please, you're no different to any of us because the breadth is infinite and there's always somebody who knows something more about some topic. And I don't, and everybody's nodding. So I've stopped trying to know everything. What I do try to do is help the person in front of me think about how they're going to address their potential, let's call it ignorance, and take an action. That's all I want them to do, is this is where you are, so what can you do to take the next step? And by the way, even the top scientists, as you know more, you realize you know less. So please don't let the ignorant be a self-limiting factor. It's and you can never know enough. It's just too hard. Thank you.
Heather, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, so your second question in the breakout groups was about courageous action, and Kate made a point in the chat about this concern that we might have as coaches that if we bring some of these topics to the table, it's going to affect our business. And in the CCA call recently, Zoe had a provocation which just sparked something for me, and I've gone off and I've done something about it. I'm a little bit nervous. I can feel the nervousness now coming up sharing this, but I'm taking some very courageous action on the basis of this. Next week, I am launching a new website called Gift-Based Coaching, and I have removed all prices from so it is pay as you feel coaching that we are offering, myself and a colleague, to try and, because I believe that the climate crisis is inextricably linked with our economic system and with our social systems. And so, yeah, we're going to have a go at the gift economy and see what sort of response we get. And I'm making myself vulnerable. Even sharing this here, I feel a little bit vulnerable, but yeah, that's the courageous action we're taking. I think, you know, if we want to see change in the system, we have to be that change.
Brilliant, Heather. Love it.
Thank you. Watch this space.
Yeah, and I would like to add that
I think you've just go on, Linda.
Oh, no, you carry on. Go on. You've not had much time here today.
I just think I think it's but it's courageous, and it's a beautiful illustration of how there are limitless responses to this reality that we find ourselves in. You know, there is no one response. Just as Michael said, you don't have to know everything. Of course, you can't know everything by definition, and there is no single right response. You know, we all, every one of us in our situations is different. Our clients are all different. There is no one single response. But what we can be sure of is that we need to change a lot, and that we can each change all sorts of things, and our clients can change all sorts of things. There won't be one right answer. But you've just given us a beautiful illustration, Heather. Thank you very much. I'm really conscious of time, Hannah. Should we go into the second panel conversation? Oh, don't know if I heard that. Hannah, did you hear me? Do you want to go into the second panel session before we run out of time?
You need to come off mute, Hannah.
Sorry, apologies for that. So if we go to Zoe first, because we know we can hear you at the moment, Zoe. So what do you see emerging, and where next for ourselves and for coaching for the profession?
Oh, thank you, and I hope my Zoom copes for the next minute. So I'm just going to leave my video off because it's so frustrating today. Where next? So there's many answers to that. I'll try and cover a lot in a short space of time, from the global to the local to the personal. So, you know, we've got everything from the US elections to get through and to see what turning point that makes or not to the world. It's crucially important, isn't it? And through to the general tide of kind of you know, authoritarian and fascism riding across the world at the moment, and so there's a lot to resist and to push back on. I think that thinking about it from a UK perspective, there's I have a little chink of hope in what's called the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill. It's a piece of legislation that's been tabled. For those people who haven't heard of it, it's a piece of legislation that's been tabled in Parliament in September. It's a private member's bill, and it's a really crucial piece of legislation. And there's a campaign behind it, and it basically requests that we put into law that this government has to legally meet its Paris Agreement obligations, which would be amazing if they did. That's one of the key parts of it, because they're not, you know, no governments are meeting Paris, but 2 governments in the world are. So it would actually say you legally have to meet your Paris obligations, which would be incredible. It would also help restore biodiversity in this country and improve the democracy by having a citizens' assembly to genuinely influence how those things are delivered in practice and how they're achieved. So that's really transformational, and I think a very important thing that we mustn't forget that as coaches, we are citizens, we are individuals, we are adults, we are consumers. We can do all of these things. You know, I sometimes have conversations with people where they say, well, I can't do activism because, or I can't do this because I'm doing this in my coaching. I'm thinking, but we can do all of that. We can influence our coaching, we can change our practice, and we can engage politically and in other ways. That there isn't just a single thing that we can do. We exist on many planes. I'm excited about where the professional bodies might go with the conversations that are coming up in November that I'm sure Hannah will say a little bit more about in a moment. So I'm excited to see how they may play out, and I hope that the codes of ethics for professional bodies can embrace some significant changes. Something that I found the most sort of enlivening of the 24-hour conversation last week was a conversation that began about, you know, what if our codes of ethics required us to report ecocide if ecocide was occurring in the client organisations we were working with. I thought that was just the most brilliant conversation to start to have. That felt like it was actually in the zone that we should be talking about, and moving into something that was significant, you know, speaking at a level that had some sufficient seriousness to it, as opposed to thinking about, you know, are we doing our recycling kind of stuff. So I think I'm encouraged that the conversations are starting to shift. So I hope those conversations will continue to shift, because as coaches, we know in our practice that change happens through conversation, doesn't it? And it's what's called the Overton window is the acceptable window of conversation in a culture or a society. And whether that's an organisation, an SME, a big corporate, your household, your friends and family group, whatever, or our own heads, you know, we have our own Overton window, and we have to keep shifting that Overton window. It started to shift, but you know, there are many, many different groups and forces out there, and they'll try and shift it back. You know, climate denial has reduced, but actually it's just getting cleverer. It's getting cleverer and cleverer at obfuscating the debate. And that won't stop, because the interests who want to obfuscate are still there. So we've got to stay alive to that obfuscation, and keep learning with it, and keep shifting the Overton window. So that's what I will keep dedicating myself to, is keeping the Overton window shifting. Shall I hand over to another colleague? I'll hand over to Linda.
Yeah.
Thank you. I've got some workmen here at the moment, so if they start drilling, I'm going to immediately pass over somebody else. It's right outside my window. I'd echo Zoe in the conversations are happening. If you ever feel alone in that, at any one moment during your day, and you feel a moment of despair, I don't mean to say we shouldn't connect with how we feel, but just remind yourself that at this very moment, there are people all over the world having a conversation around this. All over the world, millions of them, in businesses, in hospitals, in healthcare systems, in families. People all over the world are having this conversation, unlike any other conversation before. So I think that's a big shift. I think also what I do see emerging is an awareness that we can't keep focusing on self. There's been a massive growth in coach training, for example, over the last few years around helping people to be the best version of themselves. I've always had a bit of difficulty with that idea. So it's nice to be the best version of yourself, but often it implies a selfishness that goes with it. Now that may not be true, because being the best version of yourself might be being unselfish. So there's a paradox there. But I do think we need to move all of our coaching training away from complete non-self into system, and to how we think about ourselves as being, what's the best system, being the best version of the system we could have. Can you hear that drilling right now? I'm going to hand over to Alison.
I think you've said what I wanted to say, Linda. The next piece of the systemic puzzle is to shift, from a coaching professions perspective, is to shift the training bodies. And we're already in conversation with a couple of the bigger global training professional bodies for training organisations. And I also think it's one of the things I'm also hearing is many of the CCA members are asking training bodies when they're looking for training is, what are you doing? What's on your agenda in relation to this? And I know that some organisations are starting here, and obviously Sarah's organisation is ahead of the curve. But what are we really inviting training bodies to step up to line up new people coming in with actually the purpose that coaching needs to shift to? And I think that one of the other things that we're doing is just learning to learn from everybody, and not assuming we've got all the answers ourselves. So really listening, really stepping back, and really learning intersectionally, across professions, rather than just from within our own bubble of coaching. So I think there's a huge amount to learn from reaching out, and to really understand how other professions, other organisations, other people, other cultures lean into this space. And it enables us to hold a much bigger window within ourselves for change to emerge. Over to Sarah.
Thank you. Linda, you've got drills. I've got a very loudly snoring dog. So if you hear a grunt. I think so much of what I was going to say has been said. I think the thing I'm finding inspiring is when young people coming into professions or into organizations are asking those questions and feeling empowered to ask in interviews, for example, and sort of setting expectations and raising this, putting this on the agenda. But I'm drawn to go back to a point that Christina raised about the social norms of any particular group whether it's a country or a group, and finding the people who can speak to those different groups and set that sort of social positivity and expectation of change starts to infiltrate systems that perhaps are not so open or have not been so open to change. And it's finding those sort of points of influence that I think is really important. So that's slightly going off at a tangent, but that's what I kind of wanted to come back to.
Thank you, Sarah. Zoe, is there anything that, or any of the panel, is there anything that you want to add as a final word?
I think I'd like to say a big thank you to EMCC UK for hosting this entire series, and the webinar that's to come later on this month with Sarah and colleagues on the practical tools, and also looking forward to taking part in at least one of the webinars in September, the joint professional bodies sessions on the joint statements. I think the EMCC one is on the 13th of November, isn't it, Hannah? I think that's will be really interesting to be part of. And as you said, I think just to kind of close the loop, you said so rightly at the beginning, that it's like, a job isn't just for Christmas. Climate change isn't just for 2020. This is our lives. This is the rest of our lives. And every decision we make needs to be framed in the reality that we're in. And, asking ourselves, what decision do we make with the next generations in mind? Because if we make those decisions with the next generations in mind, they'll be the right decisions.
Thank you. Anybody else before I close? Alison.
Oh, I wasn't sure if it was, but just to augment what Linda said, really, is that the weapons that we have that we have in spades as coaches are compassion, inquiry, our capacity to support ourselves and others to find insight, and the ability to listen. The weapons of the Shambhala warrior.
Yeah, and I would just echo that. Alison and I were talking over last week about something we're doing together, and one of my clients was saying to me in her role, she said, I've got to get a plane, I've got to fly somewhere, and she said, and I know you won't like that, Linda, because she'd sees my LinkedIn profile, and I said, look, I can either be useful or I can either be critical or judge. Sorry, I said I can either judge or I can be useful. I'd much rather be useful. How are you feeling about what's going on? So if people feel that they're going to be judged, then it's not what our role is as coaches. I don't think we should lose. We need to add new layers to our practice, and we need to rethink some of our current practices. But I don't think it means we need to lose the core of what coaching is, which is a safe, non-judgmental space where people bring their own resources and we help them to magnify them. And it would be such a shame if coaching became consulting. We're not talking about becoming consultants or advisors. We're talking about providing better space for wholesome, systemic conversations.
Thank you, Linda. Sarah, is there anything you want to say to
Yes, I'd like to follow on from Linda that I think that's beautifully put. And if we are being consultants, we're trying to sort of push someone towards the change that we want to see, and we know what happens. They disengage completely or step away from that nurturing space and that holding space. And I think when coaching is truly powerful is we are seeing the potential of the person in front of us and finding the essence of what matters to them and what what their strengths are, what their joys are, what their passions are. And there's always an entry point for everybody. It may not be our one, it may not be the one we expect, but there's always something that's resonant, and finding that with the person and holding them with love and seeing the potential rather than what's not happening.